Hello, Blue Jays fans, and welcome to the Jays from the Couch radio podcast brought to you by, of course, jaysfromthecouch.com. We're so happy you're tuning in for another week of Blue Jays talk, whether it's tuning in live on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. We come at you. We bring this podcast live so that you can join the show as well. Add your comments and questions. It makes it so much more fun than just us kind of rambling to each other. So join live, but if you can't, don't worry. Catch it in the archives, and maybe next time you will. But you can also catch the audio version on Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you find a podcast. You'll find us there. Just give us a search Jays from the Couch, give us a subscribe and a rate and review and all that stuff, and it would warm our hearts as we approach these winter months. We've got a great episode for you this week. We're gonna talk about what we're scared of for this off season. What scares us about the coming months, other than the fact it's winter and there's no baseball. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have our MLB Minute as well, tips to survive the off season, the hot stove rumor mill, so that you don't get all caught up in it and end up going crazy. And as well, of course, we've got our fake news at the end here, and it promises to tickle the old funny bone. So to help me fluffing up his tickling fingers as we speak, the feckless wonder himself, host of the On Feck Circle Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Steve Feck. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Shaun. It's good to be back talking some baseball.
Is it ever? Oh, man. We've switched to this kind of... Anyway, let's stop babbling here, because we do have host of the Sunny Side of the Dome here, Karen Suter, waiting patiently as always. Karen, good evening.
Good evening, Shaun. Good evening, Steve.
Yeah, no, I was going to say it feels really good to be back in the podcast. We switched to bi-weekly shows simply because it's the off season. Typically, there's not a whole lot to go on about every week, so we kind of let's do a better show every 2 weeks as opposed to just kind of stringing people along for an hour every week, right? So here we are, bi-weekly, and I'm very excited for this week's episode. We've got a lot going on here. It's going to be fantastic, and of course, I wouldn't want to other people other than yourselves. So thank you both for joining me. Christian Rao tuning in on Facebook. Jays on a Tuesday. Let's go. That's right, Christian. We're bringing Jays from the Couch on a Tuesday because yesterday was Halloween, and I am a parent, and apparently I had forgotten that part of my duties as a parent is to take your child around and beg for candy. So, so that's what we did last night instead. So we're coming at a Tuesday. And speaking of Christian, I think it might be now might be a good time to mention a pretty special announcement. Christian of Slasher Sports, they do great work over there covering cinema and sports. And of course, Steve works doing college football, and I believe stepping into some college basketball.
Basketball, we'll be doing college baseball too. So
there you go. So, but Christian and I are teaming up for what should be an exciting project. We're going to cover Major League Baseball, all 30 teams throughout the off season. It's kind of an off-season hot stove kind of show. The OK Baseball Podcast, OBP. See what we did there? Pretty clever. The OK Baseball Podcast promises to be pretty okay. So watch out for that. We'll be sharing all of the teasers and the trailers and all that stuff. But you should head to YouTube and look for OK Baseball Podcast. Give us a subscribe there. You'll see our trailers and be ready for our very first episode, which airs right after the World Series. And I'm super excited. Very excited to be talking baseball with Christian. It's fun talking Blue Jays. Obviously, that's why we're here. That's our passion. But branching out and talking about all 30 teams is going to be a bit of an adventure, and I can't wait for that. So make sure, if you're listening at home right now, make sure you head to YouTube and subscribe early so that you can be on board when we launch. Smash the champagne bottle off the front, and away we go. Anyway, but like we do every week, we're going to start our show with our MLB Minute. And this is, I think it's really important that we talk about how to survive the offseason. And I chosen this image of Ross Atkins on purpose because that shrug, that arrogant shrug that Steve loves so much, I put it on there on purpose just so that Steve would get riled up before he even starts talking.
I thought the scary stuff came later.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that pose right there is what I would do as well. Like that's when I'm stuck for an answer and I can't remember the same line I've said 400 times. That's the face.
You know what's really scary? I could see him being like the next commissioner of baseball because he just has that arrogance and that look. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I don't understand.
Poor Ross Atkins. Poor Ross Atkins.
Lost Atkins. And until we go into the World Series, he is Lost Atkins.
It starts and I love it. Anyway, the MLB Minute. Each of us are going to take 1 minute to go around the horn here to discuss what we feel are some survival tips on surviving the hot stove season, because it can be very difficult on the head. And the heart and the stomach and the eyes and the ears and everything else that where you experience baseball. So let's start. Steve, we'll start with you. 1 minute. How, should, could, would, what do you recommend for people to survive the hot stove season?
Well, I think that the best way to prepare for the off season is wait till the off season. We don't even know who won the World Series yet. Why are you obsessing over tweets from a clown in the New York City market that basically got fired from every possible high level position and is now working for News 12, which is like a streaming fake news channel out of New York City? Okay. Don't get all worked up yet. Let's get through the World Series. Let's find out who's going to be non-tendered and who the DFAs are, what the 40-mans are, the Rule 5 draft. Okay, find out some answers first before we start going through things. Right now, as we're talking, go and open a second window, go to baseball trade values, block that site so it can never come back up again. And then if you're still struggling after doing all these things, I invite you to go to Feckless Wonder. What the heck is that?
That was your time. I was trying to be friendly.
Okay. Oh, jeez. Jesus. Go to Feckless Wonder at jaysfromthecouch.com and ask me for materials for AA. Small A for Atkins, big A for Anonymous. And we can help you get through the off season.
I knew that was coming. All right, Karen, your turn. 1 minute on how to survive this hot stove season, and it begins. And just I should have warned you. There is a new kind of signal at the end of your 1 minute. That
no kidding. Thank you.
It's more calm, right? Next time I'm just going to go with like a giant hammer or something that's going to come down. Anyway, all right, Karen, 1 minute. Go.
Right. Well, as a diehard fan for decades now, one thing I've had to do myself is to try to somewhat detach myself from all of the rumors, because there are tons of them this time of year. And I mean, just a year ago, we thought we might be getting Freddie Freeman. And after that, we thought we might be getting Jose Ramirez. And none of that ended up happening. And of course, there's always the rumors that, a favorite player or two might be traded away. And myself, when things actually happen, I either get very happy or very unhappy, and I don't want to waste that kind of emotional energy on things that are never going to happen. So I pay attention to rumors to a point, but I've also got to remind myself that it's only a rumor until it's officially announced. And on that note, if you're on Twitter, watch for those blue check marks until Elon Musk goes and messes up the whole that for now.
I was waiting for that. Now it's just anybody who's willing to pay for a blue check mark. So There you go. I might get one myself.
But keep in mind that like JP Morosi and Steve Simmons have blue check marks. Okay, so
there's that too. All right, my 1 minute begins now. My advice is simple: take a breath. Just take a breath, because you're going to hear those rumors and you're going to want to refresh your Twitter feed. And I'm guilty of the same thing. You're going to want to get the news as quick as possible. And it's a long off season to be doing that to yourself. It's an emotional roller coaster that we're doing to ourselves. When a rumor is leaked or whatever, breaking news, or so-and-so, or the Blue Jays are in talks with the Angels to trade for Shohei Ohtani. Cool. Okay. Take it for what it is. Take a breath. That will be or won't be official. When it's official, you'll see it everywhere. You don't have to kind of go looking for the truth. The truth will be there. It's a long off season, and if you're waiting like every 5 seconds for a new official word, you're going to drive yourself crazy. Take a breath. There's lots of time to hear something new. I'm telling you. Like, all of these things are good advice. It's a crazy, crazy time of year. And I don't know if it's going to be more or less interesting than the past few off seasons for the Toronto Blue Jays, because you don't know, right? Like, there are different needs this time around, except pitching. That's pretty much the same.
And left-handed bat.
And that lefty bat. I feel like Toronto, the city of Toronto, is just now like, it needs to be part of the landscape, just a left-handed hitter statue or something, because we've been screaming for a left-handed hitter for so long. Carlos Delgado. A Delgado statue outside Rogers Center. Make everybody happy. There you go. Mark Shapiro, make it happen. You're doing renovations anyway. It doesn't cost like couple $1,000. Throw some concrete out there in the shape of Carlos Delgado. If you can get it swinging like him too, I would just live right at the feet of that statue. I would. I'm obsessed with Carlos Delgado. He was my first kind of real favorite player. Like, your real favorite player. There are guys like, I grew up on Ken Griffey Jr. That's why, most of the time, not right now, but most of the time, you'll see me with my hat backwards just because he did it. Jose Canseco, sadly, Mark McGuire, those two had my attention for years, and I was just in awe of everything they did. But Carlos Delgado, for me, was like it. If anybody asks me, greatest Blue Jay of all time, Carlos Delgado. Doesn't even matter that Dave Stieb was better, really. That Roy Halladay, even. It's Carlos Delgado for me, hands down. Anyway, I don't know why I just went on that whole tangent, but here we go. That was our MLB segment. Let's look at our off-season fears here. We've got a lot of them. We each got a couple that we wanted to focus on to kind of say, this is what scares me about this off-season. Because the Blue Jays are, like I said, are in an interesting position, right, Steve? When you think about where they are, what they need to do, it's an interesting position because for the first time in their history, they very well could easily approach the luxury tax, or maybe even surpass it. Who knows? I'm not getting into that discussion right here and right now. The point is that they're in that discussion for the first time in their history. They have spent money before, 92, 93, where they were like top of the league. I get it. But this is a different ballgame. And the needs aren't as obvious as we need a third baseman. We need starting pitching, maybe. But the roster tinkering, there's not a whole lot of room, I guess. So, Steve, for me, when you look at this offseason, I wonder your thoughts quickly before we get into the fears part here is just how unique do you think this offseason is for the Blue Jays?
Well, I think it's unique, especially for younger fans, because they don't remember the late 80s, and then the championship years, and then even some of the, I hate to say, burdensome contracts that followed the World Championships. I mean, they didn't really go through that. I mean, there was such a turnover of players for such a long time. And certainly Alex Anthopoulos was trying to constantly come up with the right mix until he came up with it, in 2015. But I think that's going to be the biggest difference. Like for someone like me, okay, I remember, I mean, the Blue Jays basically came in existence as free agency was hitting its initial apex, before it got totally out of control. So all of that is not really news to me. But for a younger fan like your son Liam, for example, he's never experienced that.
Mhm.
So for a whole generation of fans now suddenly having to pay attention to the salary cap and arbitration contracts. I mean, it's always part of baseball, but not as serious and not as impactful as it is now.
Karen, when you look at what work the Blue Jays have to do, more so now than in recent memory, there's not a lot of wiggle room with regard to roster spots, with regard to financial. I was going to say freedom, but you see what I mean, right? So in your mind, when you look at this off season, do you think that the challenge is and adding in the layer of being bounced out of the playoffs the way they did, do you think this off season now presents more of a challenge or just a different kind of challenge for Ross Atkins and the Blue Jays?
I'm honestly, I would say a different kind of challenge because to me, I look at this team and they are so close
Mhm.
to being a championship team that I think they just have a few holes to plug, a few upgrades to make, and they're right there. And I mean, I was getting a little worried, and it's nice in a way that I've learned some things about the CBT and how it works and all the calculations that go into it. Because previously, like up until even a couple, 2, 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, I thought it was just the MLB salaries.
Mm.
And no, that's not the case. And I really got a lesson on the way it works. So yay, I learned something. But I mean, so with everything, with the MLB salaries, with salaries retained, with signing bonuses to players that they've drafted, benefits, minor league salaries, all these things that go into it, they're actually just over 200 million now. And then when you add in the likely arbitration awards, there's a chance that they could get pretty close to that threshold there without even doing anything.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit nervous at first to hear about that. And then I had a look at team payroll for 2022 and like just the ranking as far as who spent what and how many teams exceeded that $230 million threshold. And it's going up to 233, I think, next year, is it? 7 teams already exceeded that threshold last year. And of those 7 teams, 6 of them were playoff teams. And haha to you, Red Sox. But seriously, Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins, Steve, I know you don't want to hear this, but these guys know what they're doing. And they would not have taken the steps that they have in terms of the money that they've spent only to know that they have to stop here and they have to start shedding salary and they can't. I'm not suggesting that they're going to add another $100 million in contracts this offseason. And I mean, $100 million for this year. But I believe that they are prepared to do whatever it takes, as long as it's not absolutely ridiculous, to stay competitive, to
Yeah.
to go pretty much all in for this season.
Yeah, I mean, they don't really have a choice at this point, and it may take some creative tinkering, which is where my first fear comes in. But to me, it's fascinating. And one thing I might do, I'll see if I can do this quickly because I don't want to take forever to do it. But I found this super helpful. If you look at COT's baseball contracts, they actually have a Google Sheets, a spreadsheet that they just keep updating. And I've actually bookmarked that. And it has actually, it looks at like multiple years and their payroll and then their salary cap payroll and all of that stuff, because it does include different things. Maybe I won't put it up here right now because it's just too much But I do recommend Cots baseball contracts. Go ahead and take a look at the Blue Jays and just click on their spreadsheet and keep that open. Have a look at it. It's fascinating if you're into the roster kind of construction and management and all of that. But what we will do, let's move into our off-season fears. We've got some very interesting ones, and I'm going to lead off here because I have a confession to make to all of our listeners. You may recall over the years, I have. It took me a while, let's say, to get on board with Teoscar Hernandez. It took me a while to get on board. I'll just say that. There was a while there where I did not think that he would turn into what he has turned into. And, I was wrong. He's clearly surpassed my expectations for him, which is why he's actually my first fear. And the fear is that they'll have to trade him because when you look at money, first of all, he's projected at $14 million. That's not a small amount of change when you consider that they're trying to go for a World Series here and may have to spend a lot of money. Losing Teoscar Hernandez to me is scary. When you look at this, and everybody will say, well, the Blue Jays offense is so good. Yes, it is. But here's the problem. It's good because Teoscar Hernandez is in it. That's my concern. Yes, you can trade from the Major League roster. Absolutely. You can do that. Losing Teoscar Hernandez, though, that's robbing Peter to pay Paul, and you're still in debt. And that's my concern. So what we'll do with each fear, we'll go around just kind of getting reactions. So Steve, I'll start with... No, actually, sorry, Steve. I am going to start with Karen. And here's why. Because Karen was right about Teoscar Hernandez. I was not. I was less than right.
Okay, Fonzie. Exactly right.
Yeah, I was wrong about Teoscar Hernandez. So Karen, I'm going to start with you. Basically, do you share my fear?
I mean, I would share a heartbreak if they did trade him away. I don't know. I'm not really where you are in the sense that they're going to have to make a move this big in order to add payroll. I think, like I said, they've never done it before, but I'm sure the conversations have happened behind closed doors, even though they're not out there announcing it to everybody, because that would be silly. Then every player and their agent would hear that and bookmark it and go after the Jays for every last dime that they can get. I think they're going to do. I think they're going to do what they need to do. Is it absolutely out of the realm of possibility, especially with him being free agent eligible in a year from now? No, it's not. But they would have to add to their outfield. They'd have to, even if they acquired a better defensive center fielder and moved Springer over to right, then maybe you lose something on offense, but gain more on defense. And a little like a piece that I wrote. And speaking of pieces, and I hope you're okay with me doing this, but I want to tell our audience how absolutely amazing, Shaun, you are, and to be with you here on Jays from the Couch, because a few years ago when you wrote a piece basically saying that you didn't think Teoscar Hernandez would be much of anything. And I said, I read it, I like your writing, but I totally disagree with your conclusion there. You encouraged me to write a rebuttal article to what you did. A lot of people, their ego would have been way too big for that, but not you. Seriously. I mean, I've shared privately some of my other experiences. And I just want to say how much I appreciate being a part of Jays from the Couch. And the number one reason why is you and the way that you treat all of us. So thank you.
Steve, your turn.
Do you need another minute? Are you okay?
Yeah, you keep going. You'll hear a ding.
Okay. Well, see, the advantage of being the feckless wonder is that everybody just assumes you're wrong all the time anyway. so it doesn't stand out as much. So you need to be a little meaner, I think, Shaun, to a certain degree. I
I
think
thought I
where some,
was.
I think where some of the fear comes in is you're watching a team in the World Series that, in essence, just decided, you know what, we know we can't fix all our pitching problems, certainly not in the short term. So we're going to just load up on bats and we're just going to beat you into submission. Conversely, looking at the Phillies lineup, look at the Phillies lineup now that Bryce Harper is back and healthy in it, and think of it and the struggles they had when he wasn't there. As talented as the Blue Jays lineup is on the whole, or as all of the analytic people like to say, in the aggregate, you take Teoscar. I have to spit those words out. It's. I really need therapy. If there's a therapist out there, again, it's fecklesswonder at jasonthecouch.com. Please let me know your availability. But if you take Teoscar Hernandez out of this lineup, theoretically, you are now having the situation of what the Phillies were in June and July when Harper was out and other bats. You can't afford to have a Schwarber slump or a Real Muto or a Nick Castellanos, but you can't afford that because that's how valuable that production is. So I think that's where your fears are validated, is that in essence, you take him out of that lineup. You you can't duplicate maybe what the Phillies are done or what the Red Sox have done in the past. And you now seriously have compromised a lineup that clicks pretty much top to bottom.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now that I've composed myself, Karen, thank you for your kind words. I can't. Yeah, I'm just going to say thank you. Um, but I do agree. Like, removing Teoscar is too much of a. Yeah, it's too much. It leaves too much of a hole in this lineup, and he's a big part of it. So that's one of my fears. Let's go to Steve and his first fear, and it has to do with shortstop. So, Steve, I'll let you kind of explain what you mean there.
Okay, well, my fear is that the Blue Jays will totally refuse to even consider the option of having a serious defensive upgrade at the shortstop position. And it would have to be a serious upgrade. And then have that uncomfortable conversation with Bo saying, Bo, we know you're part of our future, but your future is at second base. That's a big fear of mine. And on a lot of levels, it should make me feel good because the Blue Jays are so loyal, especially to their younger prospects. This regime may be too loyal to some of the younger prospects that are there sometimes, but to not even consider acquiring a shortstop and having Bo move to second, and that kind of plays into your fear, Shaun. In order to be able to do that, they may need to move a salary like Teoscar Hernandez to bring in a Dansby Swanson, or I'll even throw out Carlos Correa. Carlos Correa's not coming here, but I mean that kind of a player. They really can't do that and have enough flexibility come June or July when Atkins wakes from his hibernation and it says, "Oh, I need to make some trades." Oh, wait a minute. Oh, wow. Oh, boy. Okay, you can't do that if you have Hernandez's salary on the books and you're spending money to really upgrade your team as a whole, especially defensively, by bringing in a shortstop.
Yeah, and I would say that there's a couple of things I would say. The first one is they did try and sign Corey Seager last winter. You would have had to move Bo then, and Bo has said before, "I'll move for somebody better." I mean, what else is he going to say? Like, yes, of course you are. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, you're moving.
Is Corey Seager better defensively than Bo Bichette? No, I think he's Bo Bichette light defensively.
Perhaps.
Offensively, he might be a better hitter, but
Right. But that was a specific situation because of the left-handed bat, right? Now, what I would say is that they do have Santiago Espinal, who is a better defensive shortstop, but you're not putting him. And this may be sacrilege in Blue Jays land, but yes, he was an all-star. He is not an everyday shortstop. You can't put him in the shortstop position and expect that he is going to put up numbers that are like his first half of this past season. So in my mind, while Santiago Espinal is a great defender at shortstop, he's not an everyday shortstop. And that's my own opinion. Burn me alive if you wish, but I'll be at the foot of that Delgado statue. Come and find me. But so that's my concern. So if there's, I guess my point is that I think that they're open to. They know they have to know. They watch the friggin' games. They gotta know. Bo.
Don't go there. Don't make me bring back that Ross Atkins press conference. Don't. You're really trying to egg me on here. Don't do that. Watch your words carefully, or otherwise my head will literally explode right here on live stream.
They know that it's an issue. My question is, when you're looking at the upgrades out there, let's say it's a Dansby Swanson, sure, Gold Glove shortstop, absolutely no problem. But was Corey Seager a one-off, or are they actually looking for a shortstop? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the extent to which they believe that that Bo needs to move. And that's my only hang up. I don't disagree with you. And I will also point out that the Yankees won with Derek Jeter at shortstop. Derek Jeter was not a good shortstop. So I'm just going to throw that out there. But Karen, on the shortstop.
Great. I mean, the Corey Seager thing was not a one-off, because if you remember a year earlier, the Blue Jays tried to trade for Francisco Lindor.
Yes.
And apparently they had the second most preferred offer, and what people were saying was not knowledge of what the Blue Jays offered, that they actually may have offered more in terms of overall value than the Mets did. But what Cleveland ultimately preferred was there were two MLB ready or near MLB ready players and two prospects, whereas the Jays offer was more heavily weighted in terms of prospects.
Yeah.
So it is an ongoing thing that they're looking to do. And hey, you know what? Maybe they do sign Dansby Swanson and move Bichette. He has said that if they bring in, I don't even remember the exact words, but a big enough star player, whatever, that he would move to second base. I saw the defense. I mean, I watch all the games as well, and I don't know what it is, because I'm very much in the minority, but I feel like there's an overall good defensive shortstop in there in Bo, because at times he makes very, very good defensive plays some of the time. Other times, you don't know what the heck is going on with him. And when I watch him, I really feel like so many of his misplays are due to a mental approach. And like, I just wish there were a way to wave my magic wand and fix that mental approach, because I think he could be an above average defensive shortstop. By comparison, when they moved Kevin Biggio to third base in 2021, that was just a square peg in a round hole. He doesn't have the physical ability to do it. He doesn't have the arm strength. And that's not something that you can teach. A mental approach, I know I'm in the minority. A lot of people want to see him on second base now, and people suggest it, and it's just like sometimes I get this nagging feeling, a little voice in the back of my head that says they shouldn't do that. But regardless, I could definitely see it happening. It could happen for the right player. And I mean, I'm kind of with you about Espinal. I love Espinal for defense. He had a terrific first half. and earned an all-star appearance. And I don't want to believe it. Maybe that was his ceiling. Maybe that's as good as it's ever going to get for him. I don't know that he is a player that can consistently hit that well over 162 games in Major League Baseball, regardless of whether you're playing in shortstop, second base, or whatever. But I just wonder if they bring in an upgrade at shortstop and Bo's your second baseman, is the roster big enough for, say, Dansby Swanson, Bichette, Biggio, Merrifield, and Espinal? What do you do with all those guys? Someone's probably got to go.
Yeah, that you just added another fear to my
What the only market observation I want to throw into this is the reason that and ordinarily I would not be uber aggressive about bringing in a shortstop. Last year and this year are probably the two best free agent shortstop markets that there have ever been, certainly that I can remember. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of guys that are being talked about having to be moved because of contracts. So it's just all of the tumblers falling into place, to unlock potentially a Bichette move.
Yeah. And I don't disagree. Like, if it happens, great. All I'm saying is, me personally, if I'm in the general manager seat, I'm not making shortstop like my top priority this offseason. That's all. Yeah. That's all I'm saying. Like, I'm not giving my firstborn to get a shortstop. So that's all. That's all I'm saying. I don't disagree. No. But now, Karen, your fear has.
Oh, doesn't have Steve have another fear, or are we coming back?
We're all doing one each.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay, pardon me. Sorry. Yeah,
that's okay. You really don't want to talk about this rotation. You're terrified.
Trying to get out of it. Yeah, no. Feet to the fire.
That's right. So, Karen, your first fear is the rotation. I'll let you go ahead and tee that up for everybody.
Right. So I see you've got Kikuchi and yours there, Shaun, and so I won't spend a lot of time talking about him. Everybody's got different ideas as far as what they think the number one and number two and whatever priority should be. For me, it's most definitely the rotation. So I don't know what's going to happen with Yusei Kikuchi, but we all know what did happen in 2022. He was a fifth starter and for the most part, not a very good one. So will he be again in 2023? I don't know. My feeling is that that's not the best place for him. And we all know Ross Stripling is eligible for free agency. I really think that they've got to at least either bring Ross Stripling back or acquire somebody else who's at least as good as him, if not better. Better would be great. But I feel, unlike a number of people I know, that a fifth starter spot was a real problem for the Blue Jays in 2022. And not only was the record, so I've been working on some numbers. So when any one of the Fab Four of Manoah, Guzman, Barrios, believe it or not, is in that conversation, and Ross Stripling started a game, the Blue Jays record was 76-42. When anyone other than those four started a game, including openers, they were 16-28. So not only do you have, on one hand, a very, very good team that could make a deep run on this hand, and maybe not even a playoff team on this hand, but I think it had a domino effect whereby there were just so many bullpen games. There were those that were planned and those that they just came to happen because whoever started wasn't any good. And they figured, you know what, we got to try to win this game because every game was important. So you ended up really burning out your bullpen. And I think that carried over into the playoffs. And the bullpen that so many people think just wasn't good enough. I mean, they were good for stretches of time. They were good in game one of the short wild card series. I mean, they allowed 0 runs. The bullpen did in that game. But game two was another story, as we saw. So I really think this thing is a domino effect. I think the Blue Jays need to get their rotation sorted out. And whether it's the inability, I'm hoping that's not the case, because there's another side of me that really believes in them in the front office. But whether it's the inability to get Ross Strickling replacements and a fifth starter, whether they just hand the ball back to Yusei Kikuchi in those games, I don't know. But that would be one of the worst case scenarios for me. If they go into the season with a rotation that's really shaky at best. So
Yeah. And I think for me, the rotation is of importance because of everybody after those top three that you mentioned. And even let's say Ross Stripling comes back. I believe that has to be a priority for me. I'm perfectly happy throwing him in the rotation in the fourth spot, and let's go. That's a horse I'm willing to ride But beyond that is the depth in AAA and all of that, and there's a massive drop off between your top three and the depth. And my thing is, like, I agree, you can't leave the rotation as is. You've got to plug in that insulation between the top three and the depth, because that is where the season is going to come down to. In my opinion, that gap between the top three starters and that pitching depth, if that doesn't get fixed, that's going to sink the season, in my opinion. Go ahead, Steve. Your thoughts on the rotation?
Well, I mean, it does concern me, and I think if the Jays make Stripling a priority, which again I agree, I think he's earned that.
Mhm.
I think that goes a long way to saying again he is the player rep, and he was pretty outspoken, and usually that rubs Atkins and Shapiro the wrong way. Ask Chris Archer and a whole bunch of players, in Cleveland back in their stay there that were outspoken, and they were gone pretty much after that. But another key is have starters, guys you drafted as starters and have developed as starters, have them remain starters, and then acquire bullpen pieces that have been developed and have been proven to be major league bullpen pieces to be bullpen pieces. Don't, Karen used the thing with Biggio about the square peg in the round hole. Don't try to make someone who's been a starter their entire professional, college, and amateur career into a reliever because you think that's the way to fill the hole. I mean, but the rotation is important. I do think they have a fifth starter candidate. I think that Mitch White is that guy. I'm that high on him. There are other things that could happen where you don't have to move Kikuchi out of that comfort level he seemed to have found, in the bullpen. But yeah, they need to do something. But again, don't, as you said, that disparaging between AAA and even AA to a certain degree. Don't try to take somebody that's starting in the minors and help them fill your bullpen issues, and vice versa. A guy that suddenly you've been pitching in relief in the minors, don't now try to lengthen him out and stretch him out and make him into a starter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing too is, like, I'm not interested in seeing band-aid solutions either. Like, you don't see too many people with a garage full of Rolls Royce and then they have, like, a 1987 Honda Civic. Like, it just doesn't work. You know what I mean? So that's, yeah. With regard to the rotation, that's my thing. When we're just, like, we are running out of time, so maybe as opposed to kind of weighing in on each one, we'll just simply go back around. I'll present mine, Karen, you yours, and then Steve yours, just so that we don't go on all winter. So my second fear is Kikuchi, not the man himself. I'm sure he's perfectly lovely. I'm not afraid of him. Um, I am afraid of him taking a starting pitching spot. My fear is that the front office will either A, decide that they can fix him and that he is a viable starter on a championship team, and that they'll go with that. And then they'll operate this offseason with that mentality. That would be a mistake. My other fear is that they will have to rely on him because they don't have a choice. because they don't fill in those fourth, fifth starting spots. And in all honesty, I would rather see them get not one, not two, but three starting pitchers before they consider Kikuchi. That's where I am with regard to, you say Kikuchi as a starter. In the bullpen, he had a bit more success. Not much, but he had more. But I think you want to, if their plan A doesn't work, that he's just not an effective starter, and that he can't be fixed by the magical Pete Walker. Wave his little magic handlebar mustache and fix everything. Then, I mean, it's got to be the bullpen. Short stints. Put him in a position where he can do the least amount of damage possible. And you're paying him $13 million. I don't care. This isn't about money for me. This is about production. This is about winning baseball games, and he doesn't do that for me. So I'm afraid that Kikuchi will be in the starting rotation. Steve, you have your second fear is, I summarized it, and perhaps unfairly, but I did write no trades, but I'll let you kind of explain what no trades means.
Okay, well, no, I think that's a good summary. Now, it might seem odd given the fact that I'm always criticizing Ross Atkins for not making trades until it's too late, and then he's having to go through the bargain bin to try to fix the problems that could have been fixed earlier. But it's much easier to spend daddy's money than it is to sit down and try to work out a way to get a part-time job, and then I can get my car, and then it's much easier. Can you pull up that picture of Ross Atkins just real fast?
Yep. Let me bring that back here. Oddly, it was very quick.
Okay, look at that face. Okay, that is the kid in your neighborhood, your high school, your college, in the office. That's that comes from money. And he just thinks that everything can be taken care of with money. Like, oh, honey, I'm sorry I made you feel uncomfortable in the office. So here's some money. Or, oh, I'm sorry that I ran over, the brand new bike you just got for Christmas that your family had to work 3 jobs to buy you. Here's some money. That's what Ross Atkins, my fear is that's what he is. He knows he's got that cash reserve, in there. Ross Atkins is the Donald Trump of baseball general managers. Okay. Way too much money. And every time he makes a mistake, he just tries to buy his way out of it. Okay. That's what concerns me. He's going to try to buy commodities that can fill the holes rather than really getting value by making a trade, sitting down, making a fair trade, doing an honest inventory of what your roster is and the strengths and weaknesses it is. Just because you drafted him or you think he's has the second best curveball in organized baseball, it doesn't matter if the other team doesn't do that. And that's where Atkins, I think, fails. He's too inflexible in the trade market. That's why he's not successful. But that's my concern, is they're going to just try to keep throwing money at it. Right. Because theoretically, if Rogers gives the go-ahead, they can go over the luxury tax. Yeah. Okay, and they can wait another year to try to solve some of the longer-term salary cap issues. Well, not salary cap, but in essence, it's a salary cap. They don't like to call it that. They can work out those issues long-term. So that's my other fear, is that he's just going to try to buy his way out with that Ivy League looking, head tilted, smirking, look down my nose at you attitude that he has.
I feel like there was a point in history where Steve Feck reached out to Ross Atkins for just like, hey, want to grab a cup of coffee? And Ross said no. And now Steve's like a spurned lover. He's like,
Hey, I've had a drink with Dave Dombrowski and John Scherholz. That's enough. I don't need to be scraping and slumming it with Ross Atkins to try to get some kind of baseball validation.
Oh, slumming it with Ross Atkins.
You started this. It's your fault.
I did. It's true.
Like everybody out there, and Karen's going to be mad at me, but you started this.
There's a new podcast show right there. The show name Slumming It with Ross Atkins. Anyway, Karen, we're off the rails. All right, Karen, your final fear is probably the most interesting here. And I think a lot of people might actually share it, but there's no way to kind of insulate against it. That's why it's fascinating to me. And I summarized it by saying making the wrong move. So why don't you go ahead and explain that to everybody?
Right. So, I mean, I don't fear the lack of moves. That there will be moves. Like there's no question that there's going to be moves because they're going to try and upgrade. They're going to try to take the next step forward from where they have gotten to up until this point. It would surprise, I'm sure, absolutely no one if they end up trading one of their three catchers, Danny Jansen, Alejandro Kirk, or Gabriel Moreno. One thing that scares me is because looking at, just take those three guys, for example, the Blue Jays have a wealth at catcher that probably none of the other 29 organizations have. So they're in a real position of strength that way. And I mean, they can take that and try to upgrade, if there's a good matchup out there, and I'm sure there is, try to upgrade another area of need by subtracting from an area of strength. The big question is, which is the best way to do that? Which one of those three would be the right one to trade away? Because, and I even said not that long ago to somebody else that I know, if you could somehow wave a magic wand and take the absolute best qualities from each of these three catchers, you'd have a Hall of Famer and probably one of the best catchers that ever played the game of baseball, because each one has a little bit different strengths. That's a little bit better than maybe what the other two have. But I mean, imagine, so you've got Alejandro Kirk, who was the starting catcher in the All-Star game for the American League last season. Has he reached his season? There are people who think that he's about to decline very quickly. I don't share that fear, but let's say he's the one that you trade away and he goes on to be an all-star for the next 5 seasons. Meanwhile, Danny Jansen, who hit like a house on fire when he actually did play last season, what if that comes back to earth? What if pitching adjusts to him again? Because he's gone through stretches in his career when his hitting really wasn't all that good. And, 2 years ago, there were people wanting him DFA'd right outright. And what if Gabriel Moreno never turns into much of anything? Danny Jansen's biggest strength seems to be calling a good game. Gabriel Moreno really needs a lot of work in that way. What if he never learns to call a good game? And what if the entire pitching staff suffers because of what he's doing or not doing back there? So that's the sort of thing that scares me, that when they choose which one to trade away, that it'll actually be the worst choice that they could make. Or they trade away Moreno and keep the two with the major league experience, and then he ends up being a Hall of Famer. He ends up being the next Buster Posey or Ivan Rodriguez, Yadier Molina, whatever. Because, I mean, they say that's what his upside is, and we caught glimpses of it a little bit with the Jays. He just needs to find some consistency. So there's a lot of different ways they could go. And I mean, no front office is perfect. Everybody swings and misses some of the time. And I just really hope that they don't make a move that years later fans are saying, oh, but if only that hadn't happened.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there'd be a World Series championship that they can just, point to and get over themselves. But
let's hope.
Yeah, exactly. But there is no guarantee, right? And that's the gamble, if you will, that a front office executive has to make, right? And that's what he gets paid the big bucks to do. What we get paid the big bucks to do, though, fake news. It's time. For all of you at home who are new, first of all, welcome. It's good to have you. Stick around for a while, will you? But what we do, we go and we take just certain news-ish items and throw them together to make you laugh, to have some fun. Completely made up, not real. And if you don't understand at this point that everything we're about to say is not real, it's just for entertainment, and you can't see on the screen that it says fake news, well, then I can't help you. We're going to do it anyway. We're going to have a great time. So, without further ado, Jays from the Couch proudly presents Fake Blue Jays News. Steve, over to you.
Thank you, Shaun. Earlier this week, during his annual Live Fest at the World Series, Commissioner Rob Manfred discussed how it looks increasingly likely that the Oakland A's are going to have to move from Oakland to Las Vegas. Now, there was a comment caught on a hot mic that didn't get as much play, but Manfred had said almost like under his breath, kind of sort of like, matter of factly, I really wish that we can get Oakland to move to Canada so that we could get a marketing footprint, for Major League Baseball in Canada. And then, of course, somebody had to pull him aside and say, Commissioner, there's a team in Toronto, and he goes, I got to write that down because I always forget that. Now, of course, today is All Souls Day or All Saints Day, depending on how you might observe it. So hopefully you lit a candle and said a prayer for the dead playoff hopes of the Blue Jays here in 2022. The day before was Halloween, and of course it was Devil's Night. And coming up here in the States in November, you've got Election Day next Tuesday, and you've got, at the end of the month, you've got Thanksgiving. But there are two very solemn days that Blue Jays Nation, if they didn't celebrate it, they really do need to celebrate it going forward. The first one occurred before Devil's Night and before Halloween on October 29th. It was 7 years ago on October the 29th that Alex Anthopoulos resigned as general manager of the Toronto Blue Jays. But perhaps even more solemn, 2 days before what Americans consider the day that will live in infamy, on the 5th of December, the day that will live in elimination, Ross Atkins was hired as the general mismanager of the Toronto Blue Jays. Over to you, Shaun.
I love that even in fake news, Steve manages to get in his real opinions. That takes skill right there. All right. Excuse me. The wife of Toronto Blue Jays catcher Danny Jansen recently gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. And Jays from the Couch caught up with the very busy parents and asked how they were doing. When asked about their new bundle of joy, they said everything was fine and they're very happy, albeit a little confused. Jansen commented that everything went well, except that the baby came out wearing a Miami Marlins jersey. He admitted he wasn't sure what to make of it, but Jays from the Couch assured him that it'll probably make sense in the coming months. Now, of course, if you're paying attention to your calendars, Jays from the Couch would like to point out that daylight savings is approaching and it will be in effect this coming weekend. Ross Atkins would like us all to set our clocks back to just before he signed Yusei Kikuchi to a 3-year deal. Those were simpler times, he said. And finally, Jays from the Couch would like to congratulate Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on his first Gold Glove award. It is the first in franchise history for a Toronto Blue Jays first baseman. Congratulations, Vladdy. That is not fake news. Congratulations. We're very happy for you. Now, back to the fake news. It was well-deserved. When asked to comment, Vladdy told us that after saving so many throws from Bo Bichette all year, the award now makes them even. The stretching I had to do because of Bo was a workout on its own. Better than yoga. But this award represents the culmination of a lot of work all year. It's not easy saving Bo night in and night out. He owed me a lot of dinners. But this makes it all okay now, he said. And that has been Fake Blue Jays News.
Let's hope he never actually says that. Their friendship would be kaput.
Are you kidding? That's how you know you're good friends, when you can say that kind of stuff. I would gladly say that if it were me. Bo, come on, man. Pull a hamstring over here. Anyway. Although Vladdy is athletic and agile and young enough to be able to do that, because I would certainly pull a hamstring picking up his glove, even if it were in one piece. Anyway, this has been a lot of fun. Episode 314 in the books, and they just keep getting more and more fun. And thank you to both of you for making that what it is. You make that a true statement, and I appreciate it deeply. I want to say thank you to everybody watching at home. The live feed, the questions were coming in, comments mostly coming in, chiming in as well. We do appreciate that. Keep them coming. We love when you're part of the show, so excuse me, don't be shy. The audio version on Apple, Google, Spotify, everywhere you find a podcast, you'll find the Toronto Blue Jays coverage from Jays from the Couch. Look us up, give us a subscribe and all that stuff. Don't forget Sunny Side of the Dome, Thursdays, every second Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. On Feck Circle every second Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Obviously, today we're recording the podcast, so it's not this week, but next week, Tuesday and Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. You have, all of our listeners have an appointment to the Jays from the Couch YouTube channel. Subscribe, set your clocks. You can even make one of those little, I've got an alarm ringtone for you that Steve really likes. So we can set that as your alarm. Don't forget, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel as well. We really appreciate all of our viewers and listeners. It's been a great season. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to this off season covering the Blue Jays with all of you. So on behalf of Steve, Karen, and for all of us at Jays from the Couch, and poor Ross Atkins, oh my God, if he actually listened to the show on a regular basis, he would develop a complex. But he might have a good therapist for you, Steve, so that's good. So again, for Steve, for Karen, and for my guy, Ross Atkins, I'm Shaun Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter there at Doyle JFtC, hoping life gives you a juicy fastball down the middle, and you don't miss it. Take care, everybody.